Welcome to the Speaking Podcast, and you can find all the episodes along with my 8 podcasts and everything else I'm doing on roycolin.com, or just scan the QR code. My guest, we connected on a business group that we're both members of, and yeah, I had a fantastic call. Slovenia, I believe, is where he resides. Ex-military, incredible background, because if you look at him, you think he's a teenager, but obviously, you know, a little bit older, but he looks very young and helping people. Because yeah, I suppose when people start a business, you know, they think, yeah, financial freedom, everything, freedom, and then it gets burnout or stress. And I think with your experience in systems and everything, you're helping businesses, I believe, up to like 1.3 million. But yeah, please welcome to the show.
Yeah. Thank you.
Blaz Marolt. I probably butchered it.
Yeah. No, you didn't. Actually, this has been the best pronunciation I've had in any of the podcasts or any of the shows that I've been. So awesome. Yeah. Thank you for having me on. It's awesome. Yeah. So I'm, from Slovenia, been in the military, and exactly what you said. It's, I help business owners pretty much build their operational systems, and I help them being and staying in their zone of genius. Usually people have a big vision, what they want to do, they want free time and everything else pretty much, right? So that it comes with being an entrepreneur, and also, usually have a lot of money, get a lot of money. But when they start getting into the weeds, then the operational systems in the background, especially where they usually grow like from 500K above, especially if there's a service-based business, then things start to break down, and they are pretty much the bottleneck. And the operating system is the founder, and I kind of help them get out of that. And as I tell pretty much every single one of my clients, my goal is for you to take a nice long 2-week vacation without checking your phone or email while you're on that vacation.
No, yeah, exactly. And I think most people are guilty of that. I suppose, because like when we were having our chat, we were talking about the military, and I wanted to kind of go through your military experience. Yeah. But then you were telling me what you were doing, and I kind of thought, this guy's like in his 20s. It's like, but when you get your experience, I was like, I know, I understand why you're doing what you're doing. So you might, I don't know, can you remember so you might kind of similar, because I think it's important if they hear it like I heard it.
Yeah. So I went to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, graduated in 2012. Then I went back to the Slovenian military. I was there for 5 years, so until 2017. In 2016, I actually got my MBA as well, since I was thinking about going into business. And then, so January 2017 was when I left the military, and I became a plant production director for a company that was producing electronics, so kind of like over voltage protection. And I was leading their 4 departments of 120 employees, pretty much. Was there. We did an amazing job. We grew like by 50%. And if anybody knows, at that point, the car industry was booming, and the majority of our orders were for the car industry, pretty much. Like legitimately, we didn't have any capacity. Increased capacity by 50%, decreased cost by around 20-30%, and the productivity of each and every single individual by 20% at least. Then I was kind of burned out after years in leadership positions, and I went into IT. And as I think I told you, like my claim to fame in that meeting with the HR manager and the managing director that were hiring me, when they asked me, what do you know about IT? And I was like, Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. That's the only thing I knew. So I still got hired. And I got hired for projects. So I was doing projects in Vietnam, Czechia, and also Romania, several million euros worth projects. And after 2 years, I kind of said IT wasn't exactly for me. I love the camaraderie and all of that. But then I got the opportunity to become a head of operations for a food delivery company that was coming in Slovenia. Grew that up by 59x, I think, from the previous company that were bought. I was the only person in operations at that point when we started. Grew the team up. Then 6 months later, so that was in beginning of 2022, I got promoted to the regional operations director role for 8 countries in the Balkans and 100+ million euros of P&L, pretty much. Did that as well. Then I kind of gotten tired of working 12-hour plus days. And I became a chief of staff for a career coaching company. and that career coaching company was specifically based in the US. And my goal was kind of like what I'm doing right now, is to grow it from 600K, and we grew it to 1.2 million. And the year that I left, the goal for the revenue was 2.4 million, and they were actually going to achieve it. And pretty much I did all of the systems, productivity, how to organize ops, and that stuff. And then I wanted to go on my own. I wanted to become an entrepreneur. So pretty much first I started with a career coaching and leadership coaching. And one of the things that I kind of always failed to recognize was that I still look really young. And I failed to recognize that actually may be an issue with people wanting or not wanting to hire me. So, but it wasn't kind of aligned. And now what I'm doing is, as I told you, since this year, I am helping businesses systematize their operations and or lead also their teams, and making sure that the founder can be in their zone of genius, does what they want to do, and or especially that they're doing the $300, $400 per hour task instead of like the $20 per hour tasks that are usually the big bog for the founder. And yeah, that's my short.
Yeah. So when you went to the first job after doing so many years of military, how was that transition for you?
For me, it was amazing. Like, so I first thought that, when when I went away from the military, I thought the military is not organized because every single business should be more organized and better led because they're doing it for money. In the military, we train all the time, but unless we were going to war or some operation, then we were just training, right? And we weren't producing any money and stuff. And boy, was I wrong. I found out that pretty much the transition at that point, everything was in chaos. Like legitimately, they didn't know how to plan their operations or their production. They didn't know in the end of the month what was going to be produced. And I was stupidly shocked. So we started with that, just understanding what we were producing. Then one of the issues with if you know any like over voltage protection is that if it's a protection from, let's say, the environment, right? Like those kind of things are like really large. But then we also had the microscopic ones when you actually had to look through it through a magnifying lens, right? So the kind of like the planning system was done. You need to make me 10 million pieces, and that was it. If we had 20 days, you have to make me 500,000 pieces per day. And nobody asked, how many can we actually create? What is the capacity of any machines or anything like that? And slowly then I started pretty much to plan this, redid all of the planning, all of the production, the way it's done. And also, and this is where later on I left the company due to it, was I got my hands into what sales was doing and everybody else, because I didn't like the way they were selling things. They were only selling it just to sell, not for the company to actually get profit. We found out later on that, the Pareto rule 80-20, that 20% of our what we were selling was actually giving us, of course, 80% of revenue. But the 20%, so the top 20 that we were selling components, 10 of them were loss makers, 5 of them were break even, and only 3 or 4 of them were actually making us profit. So we kind of switched all of that. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. And I was a production guy. Like I shouldn't even be doing this. I shouldn't even be caring. So yeah, it was a nice challenge, to say the least.
And even if you're going to touch on the sales, because I mean, you're saying like, I mean, the way that it works sometimes is people are paid based on the orders they get, not on the profit margin, and they'll drop it just to get it in the door without realizing, and it should be structured in such a way, the higher you get, the more bonus you get. That way they're not going to, it's not a race to the bottom. And there's so many companies do it that way that I'm sure.
I know. And this is what we actually changed. I was like because I was working closely with the general manager at that point, right? And we were just talking, and you could just see like every single day, 2 or 3 times, the sales manager came in and was like, "Hey, general manager, I need your signature so we can lower the price, because otherwise they wouldn't be buying." And that was really pissing me off because the products that they were actually selling were not profit makers and were just an annoyance to make, right? So then I was like, no, the salespeople needs to get paid, like what you said. Yes, they need to sell a certain amount, but they also have to have the profitability. And the other thing that I also demanded that we would be doing is the minimum order quantity, because at that point we were producing. So one of our machines was making 80,000 components per shift, but then those people, like salespeople, were selling it just by 100 components, and they were selling it at the same price as if we were selling 80,000, right? And if you know, and especially the machines, that was also one of the drawbacks, was the machines were from the Soviet Union. So they needed a lot of maintenance and a lot of
wind them up, did you?
like almost, yeah. Like it took us 15 to 20 minutes just to retool them for like a specific product. And if you know that they only ordered 100 components instead of 80,000, like it took us longer to rewind the machines and like calibrate them then it was for us to actually make those 100 components. So I forced them to do that. And the way I did it was, I just refused to do those orders. I was like, I'm not doing them until you actually give me a reason to.
And it's strange that companies don't bring in their whole staff and walk them through it, explain what exactly is needed, why 80,000 is X and 100 is like 2X, 3X or whatever. The reason being because we're actually losing out on this machine being able to produce something that can generate more income.
So, and actually that actually happened. I made the whole sales department go with me because they were complaining that we had like one test batch that they wanted to do, or for like 50 components, right? And I was refusing to do it for 5 months. And then I was like, no, we're going to be doing them, but your whole sales team is going to come up and they're going to go, and we're going to go through the whole manufacturing process for that day. You guys are going to be there. I don't care what you have. You're going to be there so that you're going to see what we have to do. And when I was showing them, because they were so proud, they were like, it's 100% profitability for it. Like they were paying €2 per component, and we should be only, costing us like €1 or something like that, right? And then I showed them, look at the time. We have to make 100 components to get 50 quality out because of the issues. They never sold that one again. Because I made them suffer. It was like, if you're going to make me suffer, I'm going to make you guys suffer.
So like with the systems, because I worked for a mechanical contractor, they're now the biggest mechanical electrical contractor in Ireland. And I was running multi-million-pound jobs, but I also was kind of making operational maintenance manuals and also systemizing everything. Because I saw, for example, air handling units, like the machines for having the air go. People would do them in such a way that the pipes went, and there was mistakes that were costing a lot of money. So I was having checklists for that, and also the whole running of a job and the saving of files and everything, which meant that if I get hit by a bus in the morning, somebody comes in and they can take, and you send me then on sites, because we had like the ISO, I don't know, is it 9001, whatever it is.
Yeah, that one, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember going to an electrical plant where we were working, and it was just a disaster. And people just got their folders, threw them into the back of the car, had one folder, and then, you pass your... So, like, I lost total respect for ISO, because it was like, they're not going to cut off the hand that feeds them, because the reason for it to work properly is that someone can come in and just change over and everything is working in a system. But, like, and I mean, even at high level, like, they weren't doing that. It was like, everything was kind of... And like, this is even big companies, the big pharma, I saw the same. Like, everything on paper, they're like making it look like we're this, we're that. People hadn't a clue. Like, they were just, everyone had their own system. And if someone was missing, then the whole equation just didn't work. And they're like, what do we do? So, exactly. I mean, you must be seeing that constantly.
It is. And like, this is what we kind of call like the key risk factor, right? A key person risk or a key machine risk or whatever it was, right? And since we're talking about the production job that I was in, right? One of the biggest shocks that I had was we were doing like 55% of the orders for the automotive industry. And if anybody knows the automotive industry, they are sticklers, specifically Germans, for ISOs, and everything has to be just on time. Everything has to be done. Like, you cannot have a delay of even 1 day, because legitimately in the contract, it says, if you cause the delay of our production, you're going to be fined, like, I think it was at 1,300 euros per minute. For our company, if we missed 1 day, we would go bankrupt because we wouldn't be able to pay. And the machine that was producing those products was only one machine, built in the 1975 or something like that, in the Soviet Union. And I was like, guys, like, you know that this is what our production stands on. Like, this is the only machine that we have. You know what the answer was? It was made in the Soviet Union. It's going to work for another 30 years. I was like, guys, this is not how you plan stuff. And I was like losing my mind. All right. We did get another machine, which was a whole process in itself. They were actually they made a machine because they thought they were going to be selling some other things. But then that machine, which was like 4 times as fast and way more quality, it has a lot more quality, was just sitting there because it didn't have the orders. And my question was, right, it was like, can we switch those components that we're supposed to be making there to the ones that we're making in this super duper Soviet style 75 machine? They were like, yeah, but it's going to take us 2 months. I was like, and what's the problem with that? It costs money. And I was like, how much does it cost? Oh, a lot, 5,000 euros. I was like, dude, like, I'm going to sign it right now. Like, I don't care, because we're going to be doubling our capacity. We're going to be refusing the key risk, or in this case, the key machine risk, right? And if we're only looking at founders, the majority of founders are the key risk, because like you said, if you get hit by a bus, good luck. Nobody is going to know what's happening, or the majority of the time, because everything is in your head. And we just can't have that. This is why I tell them, you're going to go on a 2-week vacation once I'm done with you.
And I've actually seen a factory that was doing a lot of stuff, and they had brand new equipment just sitting there because it meant learning something new. And you're going, this is like a Rolls Royce versus a Lada, and you're happy with the Lada because it's working.
Yeah, and the other thing was, right, what like, I left before this happened, but when I was so again, production director, like, the one thing that was really like annoying me, right, was the machines that were 40, 50 years old. They were not up to par anymore. We were almost scamming like our clients. It's like, yes, those are the top quality machines, and we're actually, when you said about ISOs, right, and the inspectors, when the people that were actually inspecting our plants, so from our buyers, we showed them completely different machines, the ones that were like more modern. It was like, no, this machine is working for you guys, and then we covered the other one that was actually doing it. But what we did, right, was we went to Taiwan. Like, Taiwan is the leading producer of those machines that we were working with. The whole project, I made the whole project work. We did it. I left afterwards. So then I got a call from one of the person that was still working there, and they were like, Blaz, those machines, they're really fast, but they don't work because we tried to stifle the Taiwanese for like $20K, $30K, $1,000, and they didn't want to help us anymore. So they sent us machines that don't do quality control, because we didn't want to talk with them, right? Because if also Asian culture and every other culture, right, you want to be respectful with them and you want to help them. And they knew way more than we did. But when they switched and they only cared about money, like, hey, we're going to lower the cost by 5% of this project, the Taiwanese were like, okay, cool. We're just not going to give you what you need. And you only signed for that one. We're not going to help you. And then they had a machine there that was not doing anything. It cost like 1 million euros, and it would have modernized 85% of the overall production. It would have been faster, like, I think 3 or 4 times, with needing only 5 people instead of 30 that we were using at that point. Everything would have been awesome. But because people are like legitimately stupid at some points, and they don't want to invest the time with their company, with the relationships, they lost a big opportunity because of that.
And I'm just curious, do you look into because sometimes a company starts off with the founder and then he just kind of grows and grows. And it depends whether you're, I don't know, do you call it frugal or do you watch every penny? But like, for example, if it's a production line, you can have waste plastic. Some people pay to get it collected. Others get paid. And because people come in and this is the way it is, they just nobody kind of thinks, hey, can we actually reduce the cost? Can we actually sell this instead of give it away? So is that something that you look at as well?
I pretty much look at the whole operational costs and everything, because like one of my mantras is like, if the operations is lean and efficient, like you can grow your revenue as much as you want and the profits are just going to rise. And also like what you said, look at different ways you can get revenue, right? Like selling plastics, right? Like selling other material that you don't need. And yes, they will pay you. People will pay you just to take it off your hands. And pretty much, when I go in, I analyze and I look into every nook and cranny, like what we can do and what can be better. What can we do better, right? The only question is, do we want to do this now, or do we want to do this later, depending on how much time and costs are going to be right now, let's say for automation. Do we want to automate that, or would it be easier, let's say, to get a VA or to just somebody to do it for an hour a week or something like that, right? Because especially with the smaller businesses, things change so fast, especially if they're into growth stage with like six figures and they're going up to 7 figures. If you can get a positive ROI on an automation or anything within a year, then at least at that point, for me, it's not worth it, because probably you're going to change your offer, you're going to change something that is just going to cost you more money upfront and not getting the ROI that you should be getting with the automation, or insert whatever project optimization you want to, right?
And I know that like some companies, they just have the specific thing, but there's other times they might own a building and, lease out some of the parts.
Yeah.
I was 2007 and we got a commercial property and I changed it over to recycling. And at the time, everyone was like, I was like carbon and segregating and everything, and I reduced it by a third on it, like, because it was over 2 acres and 1,500 meters. But also there was a big corridor in one of the things. I was like, this is a waste of time. So I put in a door and rented that space to the guy, and he was happy because he could have a filing system on the thing.
Awesome.
Like, every single thing I was putting in sensors and everything. But it's like, I rarely, like, because every time I'm going somewhere, I'm just looking and I'm seeing waste and how they're. Yeah, and I think, like, sometimes people think, oh, we have to pay someone to come in. But the reality is, you can save them 10x, or maybe it might cost them for the first year, but that then just keeps going.
Yep.
And like for the next 10 years, it's pure money in his pocket.
Yeah. And I mean, and if we're looking specifically with founders, right? It's like usually as a founder, you have a vision and you want either freedom or you are really passionate about some service that you're providing. But what then happens is, and the word that I absolutely don't like is hustling, right? Oh, I'm going to hustle day in, day out. And founders don't even have the time to, like what you said, like, hey, I'm going to rent out this part because it's way more efficient. The other person is going to be happy. I'm going to be getting revenue, or I'm going to be cutting costs somewhere. They don't do that because they don't have the time to just think strategically, or just, take the 2-3 hours, go on a walk, because we've been so primed with, I would say, the instant gratification of TikTok, Instagram, or whatever, that stuff needs to happen right away. Otherwise, it's not worth it. And, or, people that are on LinkedIn and they're posting, hey, I work from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. I'm the macho person. I am the best. Like, if you can't work 14, 15 hours a day, you're useless and you're not being productive. And then people try to replicate this. But in essence, this is not how we're supposed to work. This is not how our brain works. You need time to reflect. And when you actually take a step back, or you hire somebody to fix your operations or something like that, you actually are going to be 10xing way faster than you would be alone, because you have the time to be in your zone of genius, what you do really well.
And nobody on their deathbed said, I wished I worked all them hours. It's always about relationships and traveling and everything. Why did I work so hard? Like,
Yeah.
so it's, so yeah, when you're dealing, because I mean, when people are scaling up, there's not just a one-man show. They've got a few different people. But sometimes, like what I've seen is, like the entrepreneur, the founder, the ego gets in the way. It's kind of my way or the highway. So you can bring them gold and they'll still look at the bronze thinking, no, the bronze is better. How do you navigate when they're ego driven?
So one of the things that I've promised to myself now that I have my own business is that I will not work with people that have an ego or that I can't work with. And the way I kind of the way my offering at the moment is done is, of course, I'm going to give every person a 30-minute free consultation to see if I like the person, if I don't like the person, if it makes sense, right, to even go into business. And then without a doubt, we're going to be doing an operational audit, right? So the cost is a little bit lower, but I want this person without any like, hey, can we do it in any other way? I want this to happen because at that point, I'm going to have 2 or 3 hours of touch points with this person when I'm going to be doing the operational audit for in about 2 weeks. I do it. And at that point, I can see, do I want to work with this person? Is this person the one that will be receptive of what I tell them? Or are they going to be like stubborn and say like, hey, it's either my way or the highway? And usually I'll tell them like, I mean, good luck. Like find somebody who's going to be willing to suffer for what you're paying them, but you're probably not paying them enough, right? And for founders that are also thinking about things like, oh, I have a team, they're going to be telling me this, right? They're not. Because let's say if I come in, I don't need your business. It's nice that I have your business, but I have other clients. So I'm financially stable. Whereas when I was also employed, that was my only source of income. So as a founder, as founders, we need to understand that our employees want to survive and want to keep their paycheck. If they're going to go against you, usually, like what you said, their ego comes into place and they're going to be firing you, especially if you're a contractor, if you're in the US where they can just fire you the next day. So that kind of thing. Yeah. And legitimately, I will not work with people that I don't see me working long-term, plus that I don't cannot connect in a, I would say, deeper sense that I know they can trust me and I can trust them.
And regarding kind of, I suppose, SOPs on, is it Notion versus the folder with the thing? Because it depends, like usually tradespeople and people hands-on prefer the paper, whereas Office can kind of, so
Yeah.
do you do both or how do you navigate that?
I can do both, like, because I mean, I would prefer, of course, online, because I usually do it with service providers unless they're like somewhere in my vicinity, because I just can't jump onto a plane, go to the US for a couple of days and check their environments. But I would always say do it online, Notion, whatever like thing like you use pretty much, because if you write it on paper or something like that, that can get lost really easily. You will not know where it is. You're going to be scrambling. And let's face the fact that in the majority of cases, the SOPs are written wrong or not in the best way, because the majority of people don't even look at them or don't even read them. So one of the things that I had to do in my last full-time job as a chief of staff was I was writing some SOPs. One of the worst feelings was that I knew that nobody's going to be reading that SOP except for the CEO because he wanted this to be done. And I told him so. He was like, no, I want this SOP because we need to have it. And I want them specifically like this. I was like, nobody's going to be reading them because it's useless at this point. And it happens. So if I have any advice to give to people who are writing SOPs, make them so that they are not read like a technical manual that puts people to sleep. Because legitimately, you need 5 W's: who, what, where, when, why. And if you can answer that even in a paragraph or 2 paragraphs, that can be your SOP. You can expand it on later, but you just need the person to know what they're doing, where, why, and when. And don't try and make it 10 pages just because you thought that an SOP should be 5 pages, 6 pages, 7 pages, and it needs to be meticulous. It doesn't need to be.
And because I've seen it as well, where people, they overkill. They give it, and like, I even got tired looking at one of them. It was like, what? If you've this, you must do this, press this, do this, do this, do this. And then they're unrealistic in the time, saying something will take 10 minutes when, like it takes an hour or more. And then they're making the person feel inadequate because they're looking at this. So, like, I think it shouldn't be overwhelming. It should be as simple as possible, and explaining it. Because when it's like that, it's like you're looking at it and you just get tired looking at it. It's basically like having a to-do list of 30 items. Instead of saying, okay, what's the most important? 5. Write down 5. You get 5 done, then you can do another 5. But when you look at 30, you just, and you go to sleep, you just don't want to do nothing.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens always, like with me, like when I see an SOP. And so the last SOP that I saw, it had, I think, 240 pages. I was like, dude, like, I'm not reading this one. Like, straight up, I am not reading it, because I can guarantee you there is no value in it. If you want a 240-page SOP, sorry, 241-page SOP.
That one page was more.
Yes. And I mean, it's like, why? Even like somebody writing this, it took them weeks to write it. And nobody's going to be reading it. Like, just say, like, it was a waste of time, put it somewhere else, and then either just do a video or do whatever do one pager. If you can explain a process in 1 or 2 pages, then something is wrong in the majority of cases. And what you said, right, with the SOPs, then you need to do this, if it's this, if it's this. Why we are doing standard operating procedures, SOPs, is because it should be standardized. Like, legitimately, 95% of all of the operations or whatever the SOP covers should be written in 1 or 2 pages. The rest of them are exceptions, and they have to be treated as exceptions. If the exceptions are the rule, then something is wrong and you just legitimately cannot write SOPs, because something is wrong within the operational process that, and usually this is where the founder comes in. I'm going to decide everything. Everything needs to go through me. And they become the biggest bottleneck. And then the SOPs can be legitimately written in 1 sentence. Ask the founder, ask the business owner, because that's the SOP. And this is where usually founders burn out, because they just don't have the capacity to decide everything and be everywhere all at once.
And I assume, like, say, the ones for 240 pages, there's people come in and they're just justifying, they get 2 months instead of something that could have took them a week or something like that. But also with the AI, because, like, you can feed it and go, oh, create SOPs for this. And then, and like, I even get, say, projects to price, like, because we can do apps and different things. And somebody asked me to price a game. And I was like, I just saw the stuff. And I said, I just said, you done that by AI. You know what I did? I actually put the 60 odd pages into AI, and I said, write that and explain it to me as if you're telling a 10-year-old child. And then I got a small little thing, and I said, okay, so that's what she said. Got on the call. I said, so you mean you're doing this, this, this? And I said, that was by AI, wasn't it? Yeah. And the problem is, there's people using AI and they're not even reading it. They're just cutting and pasting, and then they're expecting the employees to follow something that doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, it's so this is legitimately laziness in its best form. So I love AI. I use it pretty much every day. But the way I use it is bouncing ideas. Give me a completely different opinion. Or, like, when I'm filming YouTube videos and stuff like that, hey, can you give me some of the resources or some of the articles that I should be reading for that specific subject? And then don't summarize it to me, or summarize it to me, but give me the links to the actual articles, because we know AI is just making things up, like, most of the time, right? And that's how I use it. I use it kind of like as my personal assistant, but I will never allow it to do the thinking instead of me, because AI is not, it's a large language model. That's what it is at the moment. It's only scrapes information, and it can make things up, especially because it wants you to constantly talk with it, because this is how the companies get money. And they're going to be saying, oh, Blaz, you're amazing. Like, this is such a great strategic decision making. Like, you should be like the president of the world or something like that, right? because you're such an amazing person, and then you talk with it for 5, 6, 7 hours, and then of course you buy the monthly subscription, and that's it.
And the thing with that as well is, like at the start, you were doing something, and if you fed it a very good question, you got brilliant answers. It was great. But then now it's like, and do you want ABC? Oh yeah, that sounds good. You want DEF? Yes. Before you know it, you've got 70 pages, and you end up doing nothing, because if you just said, all right, now I have what I want, go away and do it. And as you mentioned it, line, I mean, I've moved all my podcasts from Spotify because they started removing some of my shows,
Yeah.
and I just thought, okay, I need to move them over. And
Yeah.
the information, the CSV file to all the stats wouldn't go across. They said, no, we are not giving it in any other format and everything. So then I lost all my numbers with a lot of the shows, like hundreds of thousands, but one didn't go across. It was The Awakening. And I've actually recorded it. I'd done it just the other day.
Yeah.
I got onto Kimi, and I was paying for Kimi, and I uploaded all the CSV on the way Podbean wants it and all that. And it says, oh yeah, we can see that you got, I'm not 357,000 downloads. Don't worry, just transfer your RSS feed. I was over 3 hours actually done. And the end says, sorry, we made a mistake. And I'm like, I just went back to zero because you had told me it's okay, everything is organized. And it's like, so now it's like, you have to be extremely, because, and I mean, it's not that I'm using a freebie, like, I'm paying for something, and when it tells you, yeah, no problem, we have all the stats, we have the CSV file, this will work. And what I was doing actually was giving me a file. It says, I can't even download that. We're not able to do that. And then, can you just create this? Whereas, like, ChatGPT can create an Excel file or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, so, yeah, it can be frustrating. But the problem is, as we're saying, a lot of people are lazy. Just say, yeah, create me this. And then they tell all the stuff, hey, you must learn this. And then people know it, and then they lose respect as well. So they don't even engage in something that they shouldn't have been doing anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and just look at LinkedIn, like, because I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn since it's where, I conduct most of my business. And it's like everything is like AI, right? Or like everybody's saying like how amazing AI is. Like AI is going to solve the world, is going to solve all of your problems. Just put in my prompt, just tell it. Or if you're not using AI, you're already lost. Like you're going to lose your job like within a year or so, right? And then we get Amazon, right? And all of the other companies, I think Amazon is the latest one, that they fired like a bunch of developers, and they used AI to produce their code. And now they're having serious issues because they made a big mistake, since they didn't do quality assessment, they didn't do testing and all of that. And AI cannot do that. And I'm legitimately waiting for the meme. You know the memes from IT when it said like, but it worked on my computer. Yeah, we're not going to give your computer to the customer. I'm just waiting for the meme that's going to say, it worked on my AI. Yeah, we're not giving your AI to the customer. Like, because this is what's happening. And then you're spending probably months on development with AI. You're firing the know-how, the teams, because you want to save money for, of course, I mean, every company wants to save money, but then you don't test correctly. And then in the test environment, you don't see any mistakes. You put it in production, and then the whole thing crashes, and you lose way more money than you would have if you just kept the know-how from the people and just use AI as a supporting mechanism, productivity tool, not the ones that's going to be all and all, and it's going to be your personal IT developer. So, yeah.
So you mentioned like the phase 1 is about 2 weeks. So the phase 2 then I saw was like operational infrastructure. It's like 90 days. So are you able to do a lot of that by just having access, or must you actually be hands-on, be there doing this?
As long as I have access, and as long as I have, like, let's say if you hired me, I would need to have, of course, constant communication with you. I would need to go through what you're doing at the moment. And usually this is what is done in the operational audit phase at the beginning. So it's a little bit easier for both of us. And what we discover in the operational audit, that's what we're going to do in 90 days. Usually, like, I know that people really love or want to have like the whole infrastructure done. In most cases, that's not possible. We can do like 2, 3, 4 most immediate bottlenecks, and to see that, hey, these are the results, and then kind of like do next steps. Because it takes some time depending on where you are, right? If you're a solopreneur, it will be a lot easier. I can do like almost 100%, I can do the whole operational infrastructure. If you have like 20 employees, and you're having operational problems, then it's going to be taking a little bit more time. And not because we can't do the operational infrastructure, but because we need to educate the employees on how to use those. And usually that takes more time than actually implementing the overall systematization of the processes, because we're still humans. We don't like change, and we like to do it the way it was done. And what I usually tell people is like, what we do in month 1, if you have 20 employees, we're going to be reinforcing month 2 and 3 whilst working on other things. But at the end of month 3, in the end of 90 days, we're going to be seeing results for what we did in the first month, because it just takes time for people to start understanding what they need to do, how they need to do it. And we need to be, always present and always say, this needs to be done. We can't use any loopholes or stuff like that. But in essence, 90 days is usually we're going to see like really good results.
I remember like I was doing a lot of real estate, a lot of renovations, and I had a team of about 10 people in the office, and I had everything kind of systemized. And like I made the stupid mistake of thinking, I'll tell you, and then you'll know what to do. I realized you have to tell people about 20 times before it actually...
Exactly.
And it was like, it used to frustrate me. I go, like, I'd say it and I go, I told you last week that if you're doing something, these are the checklists so that we don't get caught.
Yeah.
We have proper contracts and all that.
Yeah.
And they'd just go in as if like I didn't have that conversation. And then I realized I just have to keep repeating. And then when I see something was then systemized and it was okay. But that's kind of frustrating. Like, I mean, for me, like I've had a lot of different companies, everything. And I suppose dealing with the employees, it can be nice in ways and having the camaraderie and just everything is, but it can suck the energy out. Like I feel like you're an agony aunt, or when you're saying, hey, do this way. Same in the construction in Ireland. Like I set up systems that would save us a fortune, and I was working on a bonus system that I had a good salary, but also like 5% above profit. So I was watching every penny. And then I'd see people doing stuff that I had in a book that was like, and it cost 5-10 grand, and you're going, what are you doing? Because I was like, but it's I suppose, like, that's just the way human nature, isn't it? You can't just tell them.
Yeah, it is, because like, so when we look at our brain, right, is like, we don't like change. We want things to be, so in neuroscience terms, we are avoiding danger. And for us, avoiding danger is doing any change. We're going to be actively against that, right? What you said, right? Even, hey, you're going to get a bonus if we do it like this. And they're like, no, I don't want to do it. And it's their subconscious mind that's actually doing this. And this is one of the biggest frustrations that I had when I was employed with, so my CEOs and stuff, and especially the ones that either didn't understand how IT and IT infrastructure worked, or operations as a whole. Because let's face it, CEOs usually are visionaries, like I said, like I think a countless of times today, but they usually don't know how to lead good operations. And because for them, it's like, hey, I'm just going to decide something, and from tomorrow, like you said, it's going to happen. No, it's not. You need to first do the operational systems, and then you need to teach people how to do it. And that takes 80% of the time. Most of the time, it takes 80% to actually start implementing and making sure that people do what they're supposed to do. And that's kind of like also like, my third offer when you're talking about 90 days. And then I also offer, hey, I can also lead a team instead of you, because I've heard a lot of, so specifically here working with coaches, founder coaches, they want to coach. They love coaching. They don't want to deal with a team. They don't want to deal with like all of the background and stuff. And this is where I kind of come in and making sure that the team is reporting to me. I'm held accountable. They're held accountable, and we make great things happen for the founders, so they can be in their zone of genius. And I always tell one thing to the founders: however much time you think we're going to need to implement this stuff, if you think 1 month, it's going to be 3 months, because of the human factor. I would love it to be for 1 month, because then I would be able to do a lot more projects, and I would be able to charge a lot more just for that month. But it doesn't happen, because we always need to think about the human psychology and the human element here.
And I remember there was a person working for me, that. I think it's called Lean Manager 5S or something like that. That you and like we had a load of folders because we were managing loads of properties as well as developments. We had loads of stuff going on and lots of folders. But she had a tape system, a colored tape at an angle, because people would be taking a file. But then and it was brilliant because you know straight away, hey, something's missing. Who's got that? Yeah, somebody put it under the ground, under their desk, and you're going, hey, this is an important. But it was like a simple thing, but it was like straight away you could see, oh, there's something missing here.
Yeah, I mean, and like those systems, and what I always try and tell like whatever founder I meet, right? It's like start doing systems or start thinking in systems and building systems while you are alone. Because for us, right, I'm alone right now. The easiest thing for me to do is I have everything in my head and I don't need to type in any reports, any SOPs or anything like that because I just do everything. But then when I grow, that becomes an issue. And the longer it takes you to not systematize stuff, the longer when I go in and help you, is it actually going to take me to then systematize because you already have like an operational machine or you have 20 people, you have clients that we also then need to take care of. Like when we're doing changes, my first thought is, how is this going to affect the client? If I want to cut costs, is the client's experience still going to be the same? If the answer is yes, perfect, we do it. If the answer is no, what are the risks? What can we do? How can we mitigate this, right? And this is kind of like the other thing that usually founders don't have is risk mitigation and risk assessment, because it's like, hey, I just thought of this brilliant idea. Let's just do it without thinking about what the second or third effect costs and risks are going to be. And that's what I also do. And this is why people are frustrated at times with operations people and people like me, because we're always like, hey, let's take it easy a little bit. Let's think about what we're trying to do and actually see, is it even worth it for us doing a thing? Not just because a founder says, hey, I feel like it. I think it's going to be great. It's like, no, I don't buy it. Give me the numbers, give me the reasoning, and then we can operationalize it.
And like my own experience, I'm just curious, have you come across this? So I was really kind of systemized in Ireland with the different companies I was working. So I was like influence control, even though I had big teams and everything, but I'd go in and I'd have different engineers and foremen and stuff. So they'd work to my system. So that was grand. And when I came here, when I started building up, that one of the persons that started working me at the start was really systemized. So like, as I say, with the tape, and then like I get into my creative zone because there was lots of companies going on. And so I get a bit messy, but then I need this, I need that. And they were brilliant at doing it. Yeah. And eventually, a lot was real estate, the whole crash, everything got wiped up but then I found that it took me a while because I took my organization skills, I just gave it away. And now, like with the podcasting, I'm close to 2,000 and I'm really systemized with everything I'm doing. Yeah. But have you seen that where people, they get systems in place and then they go into their zone? Because I think you have to, just from my own experience, I think you can't do that. You have to understand the whole lot and know where it is, as opposed to, Johnny there or Mary there is able to get file A in 10 seconds because if Mary's out sick, you kind of have to totally understand it. And I was guilty of that.
Yeah. So this is one of the things usually that's almost like right now without like any differences is when I go into and help a company, right? I always tell them, do you have a customer or client journey map? So where the client is, right? And then like what you said, we can systematize pretty much everything because I need to know at exactly where is every single client that we have. And if we have that, like you said, you can then do other things. You can be a visionary. You can do whatever you want, and you can apply all of these things to, like your 20, 30, 40 businesses, right? Or how many podcasts you have, right? And also, if, like you said, like Mary is sick, I can just put one other person there. And if I have the correct procedures, what has to happen, they're going to be, yes, they're going to be, of course, like what we were talking before, they're going to be slower. They're not going to be able to do it in 10 minutes. They're going to be doing it in like an hour and a half. And that's fine because they're only covering for that person. And if you have that, then you're golden and you can be in your zone of genius. You can be the visionary CEO or founder or, whatever you want to be. Like the only other point that I always talk about with founders or whoever's leading the team is have redundancy. So the one thing is usually the founder is the one that knows everything. Then when you hire people, you have one person knowing, let's say, operations or the other person knowing sales, right? When this grows, you also have to have at least two people knowing the same operation or whatever they're doing. If you have one person in sales, somebody else should also understand how sales is done, especially if the founder is too busy. And usually I tell people, it's like the founder can be the third person to understand this or know this, but then you always have to have two people. If one goes sick, the other one can cover for them, at least initially. And that's where redundancy is. But usually I get pushback on this because it tends to cost a little bit more since you probably have to have at least one extra person that, can cover some of the stuff, or you're not going to be as efficient operationally as you would want to be. But if you're growing, that is legitimately the best possible way to do it because you're slowly going to be growing people into the roles and then just adding people when you have the trigger point or the milestone of revenue of clients that you will need to hire again and then grow.
The thing is, like, when you have a big team, it's like, realistically, somebody should be sitting down with somebody for the day and go, all right, you're my number two, and then have a number three. And every person does that. But what usually happens is they don't know, and they're just told, all right, no, you better do this because this is way more important than that. And they're just lost, like, and then they feel inadequate. And then the person comes back and starts giving out to them, and then you create a bad atmosphere in the workforce because, someone's just after moving something where they shouldn't have, but they didn't know because they weren't trained properly. Because, like, the thing is, as well, as whether it's sales, right? And a lot of the time, not just systems, but like to train them, most of them, they just assume if you're doing this and now you're doing that, exactly. They don't train them in the whole process of how to do it.
No, they don't. And one thing that I always ask founders or the majority of times is like, if you hired somebody right now and you gave them your documentation, would they be able to understand what your business is about and how your business operates within the first 30 minutes or an hour? If that answer is no, then somewhere you haven't done the proper documentation. You don't have stuff written down, because then what's going to happen, like you said, they're going to be doing something. You're going to tell them to do something, put a pencil from point A to point B, and then people won't know why it happened. Somebody else that's going to need that pencil is not going to be seeing them in point A because the CEO told them to do something else, or whoever did this. So kind of like my test for if the operation is systematized and good, or the overall client journey is where it should be, is if you give me right now your whole operational system, like the way it's systematized, can I understand it within an hour? If I can, just in a general sense, if I understand it, then you've done something really well that the majority of businesses don't usually do.
And if you're, whether it's production line or whatever, but if you've got, say, if there's 20 people, and like we mentioned, you need to kind of reiterate it so many times and just kind of explain it, maybe more training. But there's always one or two, they know better, and they end up ruining it. Like when you're 3 months down the line, or whether it's a month, whatever, and everybody's on board, do you have to have the hard conversation? Like, these two guys are actually, they're actually costing us money because they think they know better.
Yeah. So in general, the way I do it at the beginning, right? When we're doing this operationally thing, like what you said, right? Like we're implementing this, and I talk with those two people, one or two people, one-on-one. What's wrong? What are your, limitations, reservations? Why are you even doing this, right? Because maybe they're going to be telling me something really amazing that I haven't figured it out, or I can just explain it to them. Then I'm going to see if I've made the change in their thinking, right? So after another week, I'm going to have, again, a conversation with them. Usually for all of my direct reports, I always have a one-on-one on a weekly basis, and then team meetings as well on a weekly basis. And then if that doesn't work in one-on-ones, I'm going to call them out in front of everybody so that they can explain it in front of everybody. And usually that works because if they don't have the arguments, if they have the arguments, we're going to be solving them in a one-on-one, that if I made a mistake or if something doesn't work right. But usually in the majority of cases, those people are there just because they think they need to be contrarian. They don't like things, or I just like it the way it was. We've always done it like this, and I don't want a change, right? And what happens then I usually tell the business owner also, if we're coming to that point where the person is openly challenging and they're really defined, even after, I call them out or we call them out during team meetings and stuff, it's like, be prepared. This person is either going to leave or we may have to fire the person because they're going to be ruining the implementation and the rest of the stuff for everybody else. And in general terms, usually those kinds of people were not fitting the culture or what we envisioned or what the founder has envisioned. And there are always people like that in it. And it's just the way, unfortunately, it goes. Either you're going to cut them in the worst possible scenario, right? Or they're going to be there and they're going to be poisoning the well slowly, right? So when you have like a bunch of apples, just one rotten apple is slowly going to spread to everybody else. And that's what we kind of have to prevent. And unfortunately, what happens is that the majority of time you spend with those people, not with your best performers, with your best people, but you have to spend it with the people that are usually your worst performers or that are actively undermining you.
We had a lot of plumbers and fitters, and because we could have small jobs going as well. And I learned fast that if it was a 5-man job and you've got one B or C player, it's better to have 4 men, and they get it done faster. Give them a bonus as if there's 5 men. So hey, if you get this done in 3 days, I'll pay you for 3 days, and they get it done in 1 day. They'll work 14 hours. They're all happy. Everybody gets paid. But what happens is when you've got that C player, they just all slow down and they drag out the job, and they're looking at this guy going, why am I breaking my balls when this guy doesn't care? And it's like, some people find that hard to believe, but there's times you get rid of someone and your productivity goes way up.
Oh yeah. And one of the things here is, because we always have to look at, so if you ever watch Simon Sinek, right, he said it like really well. It's like trust and performance, right? And a lot of times we only look at KPIs. Is the person performing really well, right? And we have a top performer, but if you don't trust him, if the person isn't culturally fit, like what you said, he's going to be ruining everybody else's experience, and he can be the best performer ever. But the rest of your 18, 15, 20, whatever people you have are going to be worse performers. And when you fire this person, their performance is going to increase, their trust is going to increase. But also, one of the other important things is that KPIs are not the end-all be-all for the companies. Also, it needs to be culture, the vision, that people feel good and they want to work with you and for you. But the issue that a majority of managers and leaders have is that takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and you can't measure it really well. Is a lot of times is like instinct. Am I doing it well? Am I doing it right? Am I actually having the hard conversations? Because us confronting people is something we don't like to do, or the majority of us don't like to do. I don't like to talk with, Roy, you did a horrible job, or like, hey, you are the worst performers, or thing like that. I'd rather be doing something else or trying to mitigate the situation. And one of the worst things, like if there is one advice I can give to founders and stuff, is don't solve your problems with throwing money at the problem, especially with the worst performers. Do not try and legitimately bribe them with extra cash, extra pay, because what you just said is other people are going to be seeing this and they're going to replicate the same patterns and the same behavior, because you just rewarded the worst performer or the person that's the loudest.
So finally, when like you do the 90, the 2-week first part, and And what's kind of the future then? Because obviously when someone gets it going, but sometimes they keep scaling. Is it that you can come back in, or do you kind of do a monthly check out? Long term, what do you?
Yeah. So long term is, so by, the 90 days, right? We're going to know if we're a complete fit, if we want to work together long term. And usually for those, then I just have like a monthly retainer. Hey, I can, work with you for a monthly fee. We're going to be deciding on what kind of projects I will work, or do you want me to actually lead your operations team or fulfillment team, whatever you need, that I'm going to personally be leading them and have an actual team? Or do you want me to just work on a case-by-case basis, on a project-by-project basis? I'm also okay with that. But usually, if the company is growing, in the majority of cases, you will want somebody that already knows what's happening, and they will usually retain me for a longer period. And then it's just a question of what we agree upon, how long, what are the goals, and what is pretty much your goal as a founder as well. Like, where do you want to become? What do you want to do? Or do you want a strategic advice? Me just, talking with you, hey, this is where you should be, your operation should be going, your business should be going. Or do you want me to be more, I'm going to say, in the trenches, as in like executing your vision that you have for your company or your operations?
Excellent. Listen, thoroughly enjoyed it. You might let the listeners know where they can find you.
The best way to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm there every day, all day, and just send me a message, connect with me, tell me, hey, I met you through Roy's podcast, and I'll be more than happy to have a conversation, a networking conversation, just a call. I'm an open networker, and I enjoy all and any conversations.
Perfect. I'll make sure I put the links in the audio of the video. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that's all for the Speaking podcast. You'll find all our episodes along with my 8 podcasts and my other businesses, podcast coaching. If you want to do a podcast tour, help with that. And I've got the virtual assistance business. You find everything at roycoughlan.com. Sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, and share with 3 friends. Not 10, just 3, because it makes a difference. Until next week, take care.